Hi everyone, I've got Tish Morgan here who is in her 70s at the moment, but we're looking at a story of her life and her earlier life when she was 25 years old and married and had just had her first baby. And we want to just hear a little bit about her story and what she went through, and even looking back to see evidence perhaps of God's grace in her life, even though she wasn't yet saved. That would come a few years later. Let's hear about this part of your life.
Okay. Um, when I first went to the gynae and he discovered I was pregnant, he said that I was expecting twins or triplets. So that was a bit of a shock, and we were actually not even happy about it at the time. But then, as you go through the pregnancy, so you accept it, and it's one of those things, and then you start to get excited, which we did. So we collected masses of nappies and twin prams and cots and all sorts. My mum helped with all of that and got very excited. And then eventually, when it was literally about 2 months to go before the babies were born, I went into labor and I was taken in, and I had a very, very long, dramatic labor. And unfortunately, they tried to stop the baby being born because they thought it was too early. Anyway, eventually, a young little baby boy was born, and only one, and it was a great shock to everybody. Um, he was, I held him for about half an hour, and it was quite a precious moment for me. And then they whipped him off because his lips went blue, and they picked that up and they took him off to put him in the incubator. And at that stage of life, we didn't have what they have today to save children. So he was looked after, but during the night he died, and I was told the next morning that he hadn't made it. My parents were there, thank goodness. They came in and were very much part of it for me and my support, because my husband was out fighting in the Bush War in Rhodesia at the time. He couldn't get in and had to come literally 2 days after that. So it was very, very traumatic not having him there. Anyway, my parents saw me through that, and I had to stay in hospital quite a while. They they didn't let me out, and when I finally came out, I went back to the nursery that we had all ready for the babies, rushed to the cupboard and opened the doors, and there in the cupboard it was empty. All the little clothes I'd put out, the nappies and everything were gone. I was absolutely devastated, and that's when I first broke down and wept and wept and wept. And my poor mum thought it was the right thing to do. She packed them all away, and then she realized she'd made a terrible mistake. I needed to see them and feel them and touch them and cry over those clothes. She got them out, and I did exactly that, and just had to just be in that nursery and just grieve, and that's what I did. But I do remember one thing that was quite important, and that was that I felt God had taken the baby for whatever reason. I just realized that it was God had done that, and it was okay. I had to accept it. Um, and a lot of people were horrified at that, but I was at peace with that. The pain didn't go and the emptiness, but the fact that the Lord had actually, I knew the Lord had taken the baby was one thing.
And tell us a little bit, because obviously this gynae had gotten his information wrong, and apparently had, had some bad experiences for other mothers as well. And you were advised by friends and family that this guy needed to be sued because in their minds it was his fault. Um, and that might be what some people need to do. But what do you feel like looking back at that now? What do you think God did in your heart regarding that? And what impact do you think that had on you being able to move on with your life?
No, I absolutely said to my parents, no, we cannot sue this man. I don't want to sue him. I just felt it was the wrong thing to do. He knew he'd made a mistake. He didn't come near me again. I never heard from him. My GP came, and he knew too. But I think that for some reason, God put on my heart that vengeance is not for us. And I told them I didn't want anybody to fight this or destroy him. because I know that he probably didn't. I don't know if he continued after that, but unfortunately had a very complicated situation because I'd had a big gynae op with him, and after the operation I went for my 6-week checkup, and he said then that I was pregnant, and he made the mistake that I was actually pregnant before the op, even though he had done all sorts and cleaned out my uterus and so on. But because he thought I had fallen pregnant after the operation, it looked like my uterus was so big that I must be having twins or triplets. So actually, his mistake was that I was pregnant before and nobody knew. So
So
his
the
timing,
operation could have directly impacted the health of
it could have,
carrying your child to term
it
properly.
could have, we don't know.
So in today's
Yeah.
day and age, this guy probably would have been taken to the cleaners, but you were able to let it go and grieve your child. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We're going to end with that for now just because it's getting a bit long, but we hope that was useful to some of you today. Bye for now.